This is Glow in the Dark Radio. The science fiction podcast with original independent science fiction written and performed by Mike Luoma, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Vatican Assassin Trilogy and The Adventures of Alibi Jones by Mike Luoma are available in ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook wherever you find your books online. Get links and details at glowinthedarkradio.com. This is the Science Fiction Podcast, Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer, and your narrator, Mike Luoma. I've got Chapter 1 of Vatican Assassin, the beginning of the Vatican Assassin Trilogy, on this episode. We are releasing today a brand new 3rd edition of the Vatican Assassin Trilogy. You can get it in paperback or as an ebook. And this now includes the new 15th anniversary edition of the first novel, Vatican Assassin. For its 15th anniversary, 2 years ago, I re-released the book in a new form, or updated form, I should say, and put out a new audiobook as well. And that audiobook is a very special presentation, because it includes some very good friends of mine and some luminaries from the world of podcasting and audiobooks. You're going to hear that version of Vatican Assassin on the podcast, beginning with this episode, as we celebrate the release today of the new collection, the Vatican Assassin Trilogy 3rd edition, now including that 15th anniversary edition of the original Vatican Assassin novel. This is an encore presentation. This is the second time I'm bringing you this, because we, of course, did this the first time around as the 15th anniversary edition came out. It features 7 voice cameos by noted audiobook and podcast authors and narrators. And this first episode features Veronica Giguere as Meredith McIntyre. And you can find V's work at voicesbyveronica.com. In episodes to come, you'll be hearing Keith Hughes as the Cardinal, Scott Sigler as Daniel McIntyre, Starla Hutchton as Nita Bendix, Dave Robison as the Light, John Miro as Richard Wentworth, and Paul E. Cooley as Drex the Pilot. Now, this audio version is available as an audiobook, as the 15th anniversary edition of Vatican Assassin audiobook. And you can get that at Audible, Google Play, Apple Audiobooks, and more. Just look for the 15th anniversary edition, if you decide to get ahead of things. But I will be bringing it to you pretty much a chapter at a time over these next few weeks, on the Glow in the Dark Radio podcast in its entirety, so you'll get the whole book here. And again, the entire trilogy is now on sale in the brand new 3rd edition. The new ebook and paperback out today. The Vatican Assassin Trilogy 3rd edition. Nice big thick paperback. A legendary sized ebook. 3 books in one. Vatican Assassin, Vatican Ambassador, and Vatican Abdicator. All under one cover. And you can go to mikeluoma.com or glowinthedarkradio.com and just click the links there at the top of the page to get yourself the book. I usually cover book news, but that is my book news today. There is a new book out. The new Vatican Assassin Trilogy 3rd edition. I also want to thank my patrons who help keep this podcast going by donating on a monthly basis through patreon.com. Patreon gathers the financial details, credit card info, all that, and then they give the collected amount to me each month. And they do this for creators all around the world, which is very cool. So there's some people that support a few different creators on Patreon. If you want to support me there, just go to patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio to support this podcast and my science fictional efforts. Or go to glowinthedarkradio.com and click on Patreon. My thanks again to patrons who support Glow in the Dark Radio and help me put the podcast out each week. When I want to know what's going on in the world of geek, I always check out geekradiodaily.com. We also bring geekradiodaily.com to you each day on wbkm.com. So you can hear Geek Radio Daily at 11:30 a.m. on WBKM. What is Geek Radio Daily? Well, I'll let them tell you.
Are you having trouble keeping up with the ebbs and flows of modern geekery? Is the real world holding you back from knowing what is happening in the geeky world? To answer these and other personal problems brought in by your friends, gaming group, and loved ones, Geek Radio Daily presents daily informational sessions brought to you by the wonderful Billy Flynn, the Flynnstress, and podcasting's Rich Sigfred. They contain such helpful segments as history, geek birthdays, box office results, the latest in DVD and Blu-ray, video game and comic releases. Why, they also have a weekly show hosted by the wonderful Billy Flynn and the Flynnstress, which includes interviews and commentary. And to make sure you are informed, Geek Radio Daily also provides you with your daily dose of geek news to make sure you know more than that jerk know-it-all Steve. Visit us at geekradiodaily.com. That's right, Geek Radio Daily. All the geek without the weight. Now available in fine Corinthian leather.
Now here's Chapter 1 of the Vatican Assassin Trilogy. This is Vatican Assassin, the 15th Anniversary Edition, on Glow in the Dark Radio. Acts 2:20. The sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood. Chapter 1. The moon. Our bright light in the night sky, a cratered white orb aglow on a field of stars. When she shines full, you can see the glint of metal off of humankind's home on her surface, the main city on the moon, Lunar Prime. The moon, now home to more than 1 million people, an independent state, not allied with either of the factions in the ongoing war between Earth and Mars. Both sides in the war seek Lunar Prime's favor. Both sides respect and maintain the peace of Lunar Prime. It's one of the few homes of mankind not involved in the war, one of the few places the two sides can still meet as they try to negotiate an end to bloodshed, when they bother to try. The governor of Lunar Prime, Meredith McIntyre, is popular with leaders on both sides of the conflict. She's used her position to gain power, both for herself and for Lunar Prime. Her stature makes her an attractive ally and an attractive target. She's using her power to bring the opposing sides together with a peace conference on the moon, a conference gathering representatives from all involved parties. The Universal Trade Zone, the UTZ, who control most of Earth, near-Earth orbit, and who once controlled the moon itself. The Universal Islamic Nation, the UIN, who control Mars, and the Maglev shipping highway, connecting Earth space and Mars. The New Catholic Church, allies of the UTZ. The NCC with a small c to represent Catholic in its broader sense. The New Church, which includes all of Earth's Christians except for the Mormons, ever since the Great Reunification of 2104, 5 years ago. Representatives from other faiths are also present at the conference, invited to participate by the governor. Many faiths are now based on Lunar Prime, forced or otherwise driven off of Earth during 70 years of fighting between the Christian UTZ and the Muslim UIN. The governor has invited the representatives of these other faiths to attend the conference to hopefully cool some of the heat between the two foes. The war has been raging hot and cold since 2041, since the destruction of Jerusalem. It's still not really clear who was actually responsible for the destruction of the Holy City, but each side, naturally, still blames the other. After Mecca was destroyed in 2070, there was no turning back. The war has heated up of late, and for the first time threatens to spread to the moon. The governor hopes to stop this. This conference is a start. The representatives are gathered in the main conference center on Lunar Prime, the great hall used for the moon's affairs of state. The conference has all comers on their best behavior. People who would otherwise shoot each other on sight sit silently at tables across the auditorium from each other, awaiting the governor's keynote speech. Some stare out the giant windows on the long side walls of the hall, out at the gray lunar landscape, at the other domes, tubes, and buildings that make up Lunar Prime, and out at the infinite carpet of stars. Some stare at the empty dais and podium, and the giant picture of the moon that hangs on the wall behind the dais. Some simply stare at each other. The Muslims from Mars all wear red-colored variations on their ancestors' traditional desert garb. They have been driven from their homes on Earth, but maintain their ancient ways defiantly in the face of those who destroyed Mecca and stole their home. They glare, ignore, and sometimes nod at others in the crowd. The UTZ delegation is all in business suits. In a way, they too honor their own ancient traditions. The suit, the tie, the ancient garb of the businessman. The NCC delegation next to them in the Great Hall is also in traditional dress, a cardinal in red, the other priests in black, dark purple, blue, and green, with clerical collars. Their group deliberately ignores the Muslims across the way. The tension is palpable in the air, electric. You can almost smell the ozone, as if lightning were just about to strike. The governor waits in the green room for her cue. About a minute left before she's to go out and make her speech to the assembled crowd, to open the dialogue. She has engaged both sides in less public dialogues as well.
The UIN have been very reasonable, nice people,
she thinks.
They seem willing to talk and work together. David deals with some of them, and they seem sane enough. The UTZ are all business, no warmth. And the NCC Cardinal and the Vatican delegation are almost a joke. You can't talk to him about public policy. Although they do have a new man up direct from the Vatican. David says he's dangerous. A dangerous priest. He popped in here by mistake just a minute ago, and he seemed nice enough. Ah, there's the cue.
The governor walks into the auditorium through a door to the right of the dais. The low buzz of conversation fades as she's seen, as she walks up the dais to the podium. She stands behind the podium and looks out at the crowd.
Some of these people's fathers and mothers fought each other. What chance does anyone have of bringing them together? What chance do I have? Well, somebody has to try. Here goes. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for agreeing to come here, for agreeing to see each other in peace, arms put aside for the moment to talk. Attending this conference is the bravest act yet on either side in this war. I applaud you.
The governor steps back and applauds. Her solo clapping is joined by one of the rabbis in the crowd, And then the applause spreads. The spontaneous ovation drops off after about a minute, as the governor smiles and again approaches the podium.
We are right to cheer this hope for peace. We begin with hope. We put the battle aside for the moment for this chance at peace. Lunar Prime is often in the middle of these battles. We haven't been hit physically in this last long round of conflict, but we've been hurt by this war all the same. Hurt by both sides. No side is blameless. Lunar Prime remains neutral in spite of our pain. Because we are so close to the Earth, the Universal Trade Zone exerts untold pressures upon us. As their only refuge in Earth space, we also feel extraordinary pressure from the Universal Islamic Nation. The Moon.
She stops. A puzzled look crosses her face. She falls. She collapses like a puppet whose strings are cut. Governor Meredith McIntyre looks up at the moon, the picture of the full moon on the wall, up behind the podium she had just been standing behind. Standing on the moon. Her moon. She lies flat on her back, losing consciousness. What was she thinking? The UTZ war with Mars and the Universal Islamic Nation puts the moon in the middle too often. Her moon.
My moon. The moon in the middle. What?
She can hardly hold her thoughts, hardly keep her eyes open. She looks up and sees the moon. Her moon. She rolls her head from side to side, sees less and less of her moon. There are people rushing around her, grabbing her arm. People are trying to help her as she lies on the dais. She sees the moon one last time. Then, nothing. The governor is down! Call a med squad! Get me more security! Close this place off now! Nobody leaves without answering to me first. No one gets in either, without my say-so. Lieutenant Governor Mark Edwards finishes barking orders and looks down at his boss, his friend, Madam Governor McIntyre, lying on her back. His aide is checking her pulse. How is she? I think she's dead, Mr. Edwards. There's no pulse. Edwards pushes his aide out of the way. He reaches down and feels for a pulse along McIntyre's neck. Nothing. People are beginning to crowd in. Come on, a little space, please. Two men in blue med uniforms rush up the stairs of the dais to the edge of the group gathering around the governor. Medics, Mr. Edwards! Make room! Let him in here! The EMTs work on the governor. Edwards watches as they pound her chest, send tubes down her throat, and scramble to try to revive her. Edwards looks around the room. Diplomats, envoys from the UTZ and UIN, representatives from every religion practiced on Lunar Prime. They look on in shock. The governor is not responding to any of the EMT's ministrations. They defib her, but she doesn't respond. They keep trying. 3, 4, 5 minutes. They do all they can. She's gone. Edwards looks up from her still form at the crowd staring back at him. The delegations are looking at him and the scene on the dais, but they also glare at each other as they mill about, waiting for news, waiting to leave the auditorium, waiting for it to sink in. That was Chapter 1 of Vatican Assassin, the 15th Anniversary Edition, and the beginning of the Vatican Assassin trilogy on Glow in the Dark Radio, with a special voice cameo by Veronica Giguere as Meredith McIntyre, the governor of Lunar Prime. As I bring you the book on the podcast over these next few weeks, you'll be hearing Keith Hughes as the Cardinal, Scott Sigler as Daniel McIntyre, Starla Hutchton as Nita Bendix, Dave Robison as the Light, John Miro as Richard Wentworth, and Paul E. Cooley as Drex the Pilot. Coming up in the next few weeks on Glow in the Dark Radio. And out today, the ebook and paperback editions of the Vatican Assassin Trilogy, 3rd edition, the brand new 3rd edition of the Vatican Assassin Trilogy. Big, thick, new paperback and a pretty substantial-sized ebook. 3 titles in one, Vatican Assassin. The new 15th anniversary edition is now included. Vatican Ambassador, which is in its 2nd edition. And Vatican Abdicator, Book 3 of the trilogy. You can get your hands on those pretty much any place ebooks and paperbacks are available online. Or go to glowinthedarkradio.com or mikeluoma.com and click on the links there. Help support the podcast if you can by going to patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio and becoming a patron. You can do so for $2, $5, or $10 a month, and it helps support this podcast and my science fictional efforts. Big thanks to my patrons who already do this. And again, if you want to do this and help support the podcast, go to patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. Or just go to my pages, glowinthedarkradio.com or mikeluoma.com, for links and more information. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, welcome. Thank you for listening. And there's many episodes in the back, like in the archives here. So you can check out the whole library of Glow in the Dark Radio and a whole different bunch of books I've brought you on the podcast over the last few years. I've been doing this since 2006. So, 16 years of podcasting as of this month, September. And for those of you who have been supporting me for all these years, thank you. Thank you for all your support and for helping me keep going. Letting me know that it's worth doing this stuff, that you find it entertaining and want me to keep at it. And so I do. Otherwise, I'd just stop. We'll be back with Chapter 2 of Vatican Assassin on our next episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer, and your reader, Mike Luoma. Thank you again for listening to Glow in the Dark Radio. Glow in the Dark Radio. This podcast presentation, copyright 2022 by Michael F. Luoma, and is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. CC by NCND 4.0. Music by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at acompatech.com and filmmusic.io. Mike's books are available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook, wherever you find books online. Get links and more details at glowinthedarkradio.com and mikeluoma.com. This has been a presentation of Glow in the Dark Radio.